to the October 24th, 2022 meeting of the Sandusky City Commission. We'll have an invocation offered by Commissioner Murray, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear God, we praise and thank you for calling us to serve your people. Give us your anointing and help us not to seek power nor position, but rather to make us vessels of your grace to touch the lives of the people in Sandusky and those who we serve, and to seek to be worthy of your love. We ask that you mold us to your heart. Use us as a channel of your compassion. Help us to be worthy of your trust, that we may be instruments of happiness, prosperity, peace, and hope to everyone. Give us the courage to be an agent of change, to achieve our dreams of transformation. Finally, we ask you to place your hands on the shoulders of all gathered here in Sandusky, in this room, and throughout Sandusky government, so that we may continue building and improving one small corner of your kingdom. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Myers, will you call the roll?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Meinzer?
Here.
Mr. Poole? Mr. Murray?
Here.
Mr. Brady?
Here.
Mr. Pajali?
Here.
Mr. Waddington?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
My understanding is that Commissioner Poole is going to be joining us. He's just going to be a few minutes late, so I don't believe we will need to formally excuse him from this meeting. Commissioners, you have before you the minutes of our meeting of October the 10th, 2022. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waddington.
I move that we accept the minutes of the October 10th meeting and dispense with the formal reading.
Second.
Got a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved, and hearing no objection, that motion is approved. Any residents with comments regarding agenda items tonight, I'd ask you to step to the podium, identify yourself, and share with us your thoughts on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. President, City Commissioner, staff. Tim Schwanger, 362 Sheffield Way. Just a couple of real quick questions on items. Item numbers, I'm sorry, on the consent agenda, number C, letter C, it's showing that we're going to start collecting $95 per year in real estate tax. I think I asked this question a couple of meetings ago, and I didn't get an answer at that time, but I'll ask again. $95 a year in property tax. How much of that actually comes to the city? I think that most of it's probably going to the schools, but I'd like to have a figure on that. And also on item number 3, which is the stockpiles for the Healy Islander Jackson Street Pier project, the question would be an answer on why are we paying for this? This is something that Canada should be paying for. And I thought originally that Canada was paying for that 100%. Now I see we're paying $14,000 out of our dollars. Last comment would be on there's a number of issues here on this agenda where we're borrowing tons of money for water and sewer projects, and we're actually paying very little out of the water and street funds, which the residents were under the impression that the water and sewer rates going up 75% over the last 3 years. I think that number is pretty accurate, that we were not going to be having to borrow so much money. So just maybe a comment from staff on that. Appreciate it. Thank you.
We'll attempt to answer those questions as that legislation comes before us. Additional comments from the residents on agenda item. Commissioners, you have before you several communications from staff recommending various pieces of legislation. Can I have a motion to accept those communications?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, that motion be approved. And hearing no objection, that motion is approved. We have 2 presentations this evening. The first, I think, is going to be on the Columbus Avenue streetscape, the 30% design of that project. And I think that presentation is going to be by perhaps a combination of our engineer and Osborne Engineering and MKSK.
Planning.
Great. We anxiously await.
Thank you, Commission President Brady. Did you?
Through the Commission President, before Aaron and the team get started, I just wanted to set the stage a little bit. Columbus Avenue was one of the 3 priority projects that came out of the downtown master plan that was passed. It's late in this year. I think it was last year, I believe, that we passed that in 2021. In addition to that, the revitalization of the State Theater, the creation of an organization to help take our programming to the next level, which you started to see a little bit of this past summer, and then the hotel project in the Jackson Street parking lot. The project would be primarily funded through tax increment financing on several existing downtown development projects in which those TIFs are already in place. But the idea was that the city has done such a good job with creating a sense of place along the waterfront with Shoreline Drive, that for that energy that you now see along the waterfront, that investment you see, you want to make sure that we're strong up the middle and that connects back to the neighborhoods along Sandusky's historic Main Street. So that was the goals that the team had when they set out to plan what you'll hear about tonight. So,
Exciting project.
yep.
Thank you very much. We're excited to present the 30% design phase of the Columbus Avenue project. This started at the beginning of May, and we've gone through several rounds of stakeholder engagement and public engagement on the process. And that's one thing that Mr. Wexler mentioned is keeping the gravity and the activity in the center of downtown is really beneficial. It's been throughout all these conversations, something that's come up a lot, that we've done a lot at the pier and Shoreline Drive, and making sure that center of gravity isn't dragged down to the waterfront, that we're able to bring investment up and connect to the neighborhoods. We are in the schematic design phase, like I mentioned. We're ultimately moving towards construction documentation, which the team will touch on in their next steps in this presentation. So we've been managing this from the Community Development Department internally in really close collaboration with Public Works, and our engineering team is led by Osborne Engineering. Dennis Albrecht joins us today. I'll hand it to him. And also MKSK is the lead in the landscape architecture and design, and Colin Mavis will be giving most of the presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. We're honored to present this to you tonight. We're very excited to be working for the city of Sandusky, continuing our work for you, and we know that this Columbus Avenue will be the connection that you expect it to be. I'm going to yield all of my time to Cullen. She'll walk you through and show you the fantastic design that MKSK has done to date. And just so you know, the next phase is as they hand off these wonderful streetscape drawings to us, Osborne Engineering will do the kind of all the infrastructure work and do the civil documents, provide the construction documents so you can go out to bid next spring. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your time tonight. I'm here from MKSK. I'm a landscape architect and planner with MKSK to present the vision for the Columbus Avenue design. And as Dennis mentioned, we have been kind of spearheading, as a sub-consultant, the engagement and design phase for this project. And then we hand it off for all the complicated stuff to Osborne once we've got the fun stuff figured out. So, and this is a fun project. This is a really exciting one for us. It's always great to improve the public realm. And as kind of building upon what was in the downtown vision, we're looking to create a activated central spine downtown connecting Shade Mine Lander Plaza with its iconic views of the water back to the civic core and the central parks, and really make this a bustling central street for the city. Columbus Avenue is Sandusky's main street, and it's anchored by City Hall and the Sandusky State Theater. So it brings together retail, dining, civic entities, as well as cultural entities. And when you bring all of those pieces together, it really makes for a great public realm. And so the street also functions as the center of the downtown's retail environment, knitting together Market Street, Water Street, and Shoreline Drive as well. And so we were tasked with the planning objectives that built upon the vision for the downtown of really envisioning this as a vibrant downtown street, fostering connection to Shoreline Drive and Jackson Street Pier, anchoring those civic and retail establishments that I mentioned, increasing waterfront connection, and continuing that transformative experience of, as you're entering Sandusky, really taking in all of the elements that it has to offer. We have been involved throughout, from the beginning, and all of the stages of the engagement phase, which has lasted about 6 months. As you can see here, it has been robust and it has been varied. We started with a site tour and an open house where we had a visual preference survey, as well as some example projects from around the region. Stakeholder focus group sessions where we had discussions about how the street could best function for the downtown retailers, the dining establishments, the festivals, the events coordinators. Then taking all of that information, we kind of brought that into what was the conceptual plan and really started to bake some of those details into the schematic plan. Followed that up with one-on-one project discussion sessions with many of the stakeholders. Had two, there's a whole bunch of numbers on here, I'm trying to get through this fast. 2 outreach events where we were talking with the locals and also handing out info cards for the survey. We had a really great engagement in the online survey, 434 respondents, and then 17 follow-up sessions. All of that was part of a cyclical process where we, as you can see, we constantly build upon the details and the design and the cross-section and made changes based on all of those discussions. And so I'm happy to take any questions on that, but it's been a really kind of engaging and in-depth discussion with the city throughout the process. So what we heard, you can see on the left-hand side is some of the visual preference survey preferences from the 2 surveys that we put out. So shade trees, high canopy, something that will provide some cooling effect in the summer, pedestrian street lighting for safety. Lighting was very popular across all of our surveys, string lighting, tree lighting, seasonal lighting. It's an exciting element. It brings a new sense of character to the space, so it was received very well. Distinctive seating elements, safe and accessible crosswalks, and amenity zone dining were all kind of high ranking in those surveys. We've also included a number of the comments here. I'm not going to read through them, but they are available if you want to kind of delve into those. But the top themes were the downtown parking system as a whole, accessibility, so making sure the street is accessible and inviting to everyone, making sure it's a pedestrian-friendly streetscape, so rebalancing what exists today. Expanded outdoor dining, that was another one we heard over and over. And then excitement for the vision. So really excited to see what was in the comprehensive plan and seeing it evolve over time. As I mentioned, as part of those engagement sessions, we also shared examples and studied examples and cross-sections, not only across the nation, but also regionally and right here in the state, to see how they function, to see what has been successful with them, what has been implemented and has started to really bring people back to downtown. And so I'll go quickly through kind of the street-by-street, block-by-block cross-section, but here you can see this is the overall project boundary, Shade Mylender Plaza to Adams Street, and it kind of, as you can see just from the rendering itself, breaks down into 2 character zones, the kind of active retail and dining downtown core as you get towards the water, and then as you make your way up towards the parks and towards the south with some of the civic anchors, it starts to evolve into more of a tree-lined parkway. And so getting into the plans, we have, you can see here the cross-section. We'll also show this in perspective, but the breakdown of the 2 drive lanes, the 2 parallel parking lanes, an amenity zone, dedicated strolling or sidewalk zone, and then dedicated dining and retail zone. All of this responding to what we heard throughout our engagement sessions. You can also see the moving 1 block up to Market Street and Washington Row, the different treatments of the crosswalks and how those have created really generous pedestrian zones that feel safe for crossing. The bump outs help to neck down the crossing time. Right now you're crossing roughly what takes me about 10 seconds to get across the sidewalk. And this will really reduce that and have a safer experience for people in downtown. And then, as I mentioned, the southernmost block where we transition to more of the civic space and a tree lawn and parking cross-section with the 2 lanes, everything aligned and on center throughout the cross-section. And so to give you a little bit better idea of how this is breaking down, we have about a 12-foot dedicated dining and retail space, which is available for any of the first floor tenants to spill out into, create their spaces, create their front door experience, which doesn't then impede any of the 8-foot sidewalk clear zone, still keeps that and maintains that as a place for pedestrians, and then a 9.5-foot public amenity zone for additional activation and space for those shade trees that people were so interested in. Then within the street cross-section, you see 11-foot drive lanes and then parallel parking 9 feet on either side. And so this is our typical section, and this is the primary condition of the streetscape, but we also studied how to make sure that that would still function within an event or a shutdown for maybe a parade or festival. And so looking at that with the market tents and really focusing on what we heard a lot from the dining and retail establishments is that they didn't want to be blocked by festivals. They want to feel like they're part of the festival. And so making sure that this cross-section brings the festival into the street, but also allows for permeability in between and allows for flows to go comfortably and easily in between. So we've done that through the cadence of the tree plantings, through the detailing of the curbs. They're low profile curves so people can feel very comfortable moving back and forth throughout. And also because of that dedicated dining space, retail and dining establishments can really feel like they're part of the festival. This hopefully will build into kind of new and bigger things for downtown. And so we're also looking at other opportunities to activate the streetscape, either through partnerships with the Arts Commission and looking for places to dedicate places for art, or as we've been starting to study some of the area in front of the parking garage, which can be kind of a quiet, dead space most of the time, very underutilized, starting to create opportunities for a parklet there and starting to develop some of those details that we heard about in the visual preference. So we are showing 2 options here, one that's kind of more of a seating and room design with outdoor bistro tables, or a secondary option, which we're still talking through, which incorporates some of those playful elements that we just saw, some swings, a shade structure, some community tables, all in the effort to really create spaces for people and an elevated public realm. And so getting into a little bit about the before and after for how the parking is redistributed throughout this corridor. So the existing vehicle count as it is today is 115 with 11 accessible parking spaces, and you can see those in orange and yellow right now. It's angled throughout most of the corridor, but we do have parallel parking up in the civic zone in front of the school. And so our proposed current parking strategy within the corridor itself is for 108 spaces distributed throughout the corridor, redistributing the kind of totals of those, adding some more spaces out in front of the courthouse. That was something we had heard from the courthouse, and also in front of the school, and also redistributing the accessible spaces so they're more balanced throughout the corridor, and we still have the same number, and we're able to achieve that and put them more intentionally in front of some of the spaces that may be more regularly need public accessible spaces, like the City Hall, the State Theater, in front of the courthouse, et cetera. And so with the design that we currently have, plus the restriping initiatives by the city, we're currently projected to have about 126 to 136 spaces at completion within the same block district. So adding restriping and increasing efficiencies in the adjacent streets, as well as looking at some parallel parking on Washington as well. And we've been, as we've been listening and working through our engagement strategy, we've been looking at this entire district as a whole. So really studying the parking as it exists throughout the entire district, making sure that we have the right balance, and really starting to try and improve the conversation about where is it most needed, where do we need to have parking management, how do we start to sign so that the parking garages is more of an understood free parking amenity in the downtown, as well as adding all of these other benefits of increased accessibility, safe crosswalks, new lighting, and really rebalancing the entire district so it's safe for both cars and pedestrians.
Colin just switched to a fun slide, so we can stay on this one.
Okay.
But I will say that we asked the team to put the whole downtown slide of parking into this. It's not in their scope to think about that, but we have a lot of conversations about accessible parking, how to get to all the great things that are happening in Sandusky. And we do look at downtown parking as a system. We want to be a park once kind of place where it feels comfortable to park and walk a few blocks for those of us that are able-bodied and can walk in a few blocks. And for folks that need a space closer, they have spaces that are accessible and are closer. So we are looking at downtown parking as a system, how you find it, where it's located, where there's opportunities to add more spaces as we need them, and wanted to make sure that we're looking at that larger picture, even though we're just talking about this 3-block concept for Columbus Avenue tonight.
All right. And so then we'll wrap up with just a few views of the proposed streetscape. So here, looking at the State Street Theater, taking advantage of that night view and showing some of the canopy streeting lights that are proposed, as well as the pedestrian lighting that we heard about. Generous crosswalks and just an overall safe and inviting environment throughout an extended day to evening to nighttime experience. And you can also see dailies with bustling diners out there on the patio. And then here's another view looking back towards the water of a market condition. The road would be closed at this time. You'd have plenty of time, and you can see there's still lots of clear space between where the festival tents exist and then also the front doors of the existing establishments. So there's that nice porosity between the spaces and lots of opportunity for activity and safe crossing throughout the space. And then looking back from the park towards Vita and City Hall, you can see a little glimpse of that parklet towards the left there, just looking at some of the seating and opportunities for bistro tables out in that spill-out zone, but also some of the activation along the streetscape. And so this is a current aerial view looking down Columbus Ave from the water. And then the proposed condition with the extended pedestrian realm, the more organized and symmetrical streetscape design that lines the entire corridor, and that transition from the park area and the civic zone down into the more activated retail zone. And so the goals and outcomes that we're looking to achieve through this design: stronger retail, business, and civic corridors, increased public space, expanded outdoor dining, improved safety, accessibility, and comfort, and all of that stuff that happens under the ground and behind the scenes, but is really great to take advantage of during these projects is updated water, storm, and utility infrastructure. So really taking advantage of these larger infrastructure projects to make corrections and improvements where needed. And also, we didn't have a good cross-section, but the crown is also something we're addressing with this cross-section as well. And so our final kind of next steps, Phase 2 design will be occurring this winter with submissions in 2023, Phase 3 in the spring, project bidding over the summer, and construction commencing in the fall. And with that, I will take, that's the end.
Comments or questions, commissioners? I have one, it's kind of a softball for you, hopefully, but I love the idea of the trees. Am I going to have to wait 25 years to see that canopy?
No, actually, that's something we take a lot of pride in the specification and just care. So the amount of space that's dedicated will help these trees grow faster in an urban environment. We specify 3-inch caliper or above for urban environments so that they start big and the canopy starts high, so it's not blocking the signs in the retail environments. And also selecting the correct species for the corridor. So something that is robust, will be quick growing, and also will not be the kind of ornamental scale size that's out there today. It's going to be a shade tree variety.
So I can look forward to being somewhat less than 100 when that happens.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. That's heartwarming.
Mr. Chairman.
Additional comments? Mr. Murray?
All right. I'll just say, I think this builds very nicely on what we've already been doing. You know, I certainly was not something that I thought of. It was not something that was on my mind that we needed to redevelop Columbus Ave. But as I looked at it and I thought about it and I've seen the growth that's occurred in the area, it makes a great deal of sense to me the way that you've presented it, is that we're connecting a couple of places and we're making sure that that growth continues out into the community. And I think that's, you know, really one of the big things that we need to do going forward, is to make sure that this economic engine that we have in the middle of downtown Sandusky that generates so much commercial activity continues to radiate out and benefits the community as a whole. So both south and east and west eventually. So I think it's a great presentation. I'm looking forward to it being constructed.
Additional comments, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
John?
hey, it was a very good presentation. The question I always get is parking. And I just want to clarify and make sure that I have it right when somebody asks me in the future. Now, did you say there's 115 current spaces?
There are.
Okay, and then we'll end up with 136 total? Was I right on that?
So 126 will be the minimum, with the potential to get 136 with parking on Washington Street. So we're also looking at that.
Okay,
Yes.
so we'll actually pick up a few spaces.
Yes, with the restriping and the efficiencies that we're getting on all of the adjacent streets, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Additional comments, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Poole?
what are the dimensions of these parking spaces?
It's 22 by 9 feet.
22 by 9?
Yep.
Okay. This probably isn't the time for commenting about it, but 9-foot space is much too narrow for big vehicles we're putting in them now. So as you move forward, think about that.
Okay.
I think we have 10-foot now, and people are a lot more concerned about dings in their truck than they used to be. And this is a very nice drawing. I'd like to see larger spaces. I figured that's how you added spaces instead of taking them away, but spaces that are less usable for the customer is probably not the direction I'm kind of looking for going. If you want to take a look over on Market Street, parallel spaces in front of J Bistro, engineering fixed those up pretty nice so that people, it's all about customer service. When they come down here, you can't have aggravation about trying to get squeezed into parking spaces and people banging your car. So beyond that, you have to look at the plans to have any other comments about, but thank you.
Okay.
It is very nice looking.
Thank you.
Additional comments, Commissioners? If not, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. We look forward to the next phase.
All right, thank you.
We have a second presentation this evening regarding the Mills Street high rate treatment. Fine, we have a person here from Stanek.
Yes, I know you guys don't necessarily always like to talk about sewer projects, but when we're spending over $30 million, I thought it was important to get in front of the public and in front of the commission to make sure we at least went through it. I'm going to go through a couple slides, come back up in a little bit to then take the next some slides towards the end, but Vito Cimino is the project manager with Stantec, and he'll be doing the bulk of the presentation today. So I want to kind of get back to where we were several years ago and just real quickly show the timeline that we went through. Back in 2014 was when we renegotiated with Ohio EPA for our general plan. Before that, we had done several projects to expand the wastewater treatment plant, add capacity, and do some sewer separation projects and some very limited projects out in our sewer system. Since the 2014 renegotiation, we have since done 4 main projects that were required by EPA, the last one being this Mills Street High Rate Treatment Project. We are required to go back to EPA in around 25, 26 timeframe to start negotiations again. And before that, these are the 5 projects that were listed in our NPDES permit. As you can see, these projects, if you recall, they don't take a short period of time. And we've also spent quite a bit of money on doing these projects, which brings up a question that was asked earlier, is about the rates and taking out loans. These projects, a lot of these projects have been pushed back for many years. A lot of the things that we're doing out in the sewer system, before 2013, we hadn't really addressed any of our lift stations throughout the city for 30 years. So over the last 7 years, 8 years, we've upgraded or improved or done work on every one of our lift stations. Our last one is unfortunately the Columbus Avenue lift station, which now Norfolk Southern will be doing some work on. But that's our last lift station. We're moving back. We've done a lot of sewer projects, a lot of sewer separation projects and those types of things. And we work closely with the finance department to make sure that when we're doing a project like the Mills Street High Rate Treatment Project or the Perkins Avenue project or MEGS or any of these projects that we're doing, that when we reach a certain point, a certain threshold, that we are being fiscally responsible. We might have to push projects back, move projects forward based on where our funding sources lie. And now I'll turn it over to Vito.
Excellent. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So high rate treatment, HRT. So a couple of stats on some of the performance that this project is going to provide is your current system-wide CSO combined sewer overflow percent capture for the system since 2000 has been about 89.8%. And the current project, the Mill Street 16 million gallon per day high rate treatment project will, as predicted, remove 56% of the CSO predicted in that volume to the Sandusky Bay, which then increases the overall impact on the collection system to roughly between 92 and 95%. So definitely a benefit to your system. This slide here provides an overview of the work we're going to be doing. It's a relatively complex project. We're touching on a lot of pieces and parts of the plant with some beneficial use to the parks and rec area surrounding the plant as well. So if you look at the far left side of the screen there where it says Mill Street CSO, that location number 1 is that main conduit is where flow is being intercepted to be treated instead of going to the bay, to be treated with a high rate technology in order to reduce overflows to the environment and also improve water quality. So typically when we do these types of jobs, we have to intercept that flow and get it back to the site where the HRT facility is going to take place. That may require pumping, it may require screening, depending on the technology you select, even grit removal and so forth. So when we did our analysis and pre-design, what we discovered is if we just pull off flow from the actual main interceptor providing flow to the plant, with some systems that are already in place, screening, influent pumping, aerated grit, there's 2 things that can happen. Number 1, you satisfy the requirements of the project, and number 2, you also provide residual benefit to the wastewater treatment plant itself for aging equipment and also for limited in capacity and so forth. So the various components here, 1 through 7, basically, like I said, we're touching a lot of different parts. The first one, DWO, stands for dry weather outlet modifications. So the pathway for flow to get to the plant is that little tiny green line by the orange number 1. We're basically upsizing that line to take more flow in. There's some expansion to the screening at number 2. There's slots in the pump station that were already present for number 3, so we're filling in those slots with some additional pumps. Number 4 is the aerated grit system, where we knew from our analysis that it had plenty of process capacity, but it was limited with hydraulic capacity. So what we're doing there, I'll show you a couple slides. We're going to raise the walls and the sides of those tanks and the effluent weirs, basically to provide additional capacity through that system. The benefit of this is it's equipment that's already familiar to plant staff, so it saves some cost and some headache there, if you will. And also the conveyance lines, the piping from the various points throughout the plant had sufficient capacity to carry the additional flow through those systems. So we didn't need to do additional piping and plumbing, if you will, throughout the plant. And then once we get over to that, we get to item number 5, which is the primary effluent bypass connection and piping. This is the area where flow kind of splits into the primary settling tanks of the plant. And what we're going to do is we're going to use existing, like the hub and spokes of a wheel had an extra slot there as well to help convey flow over to what is the high rate treatment facility itself, number 5, where we use pile cloth filtration for the technology. So I'll walk through each one of those to kind of give you a little more detail without boring you with thousands of technical details, hopefully. But the rainbow color picture here is basically, it's a computational fluid dynamics, a CFD model of that DWO structure. You can see in the figure in the bottom right-hand corner, those purple elements then lead to that red line, which is the conveyance route to the interceptor system. And right now, flow passes through from the overflow sewer through item number A, and then higher flows overflow to the bay. But what we had to do here to improve and increase the capacity to pull more flow is to create a separate opening with that dashed line where the box B is to allow more flow under high flow conditions or in wet weather to be conveyed over to the plant. For item number 2, it's pretty self-explanatory. This is a plan view of the screening, existing influence screens you have at the plant. The blue arrows are indicative of the direction of flow. On the left-hand side in gray are the 3 existing screens that are there, and then we need 2 additional ones. One for sure for the additional capacity, and a second one to satisfy EPA requirements for fully redundant systems for influence screening. This portion of the job will include new compactors and conveyor systems and a 24-foot expansion of the building. The figure, or the photo in the bottom left-hand corner, is the western face of the screening building, which will be extended out 24 feet. The influent pump station itself here is a 3D model of that. The 2 green spots are basically 2 new pumps being placed. One where a spare pump bay was already there from the original construction of the influent pump station, and then pump number 1 is being upsized with a larger unit. So we're just basically take 2 existing spots, put in new equipment, and then we have the additional capacity we need for the additional 16 million gallons per day. For air-rated grit, a couple photographs here. As I mentioned, plenty of process capacity, but limited in hydraulic capacity. So by raising the walls approximately 3.5 feet, including the effluent weirs, we're able to achieve that additional hydraulic capacity. And then you can see the clamshell bucket that's used to remove grit during dry weather. Those are aged pieces of equipment. They're at the end of the useful life, so we're replacing those as well. Moving on to high rate treatment. So there's a lot of pieces and parts moving on that are a function of the HRT system. First thing I want to emphasize here is that this is roughly to scale where that black outline with the orange halo is the proposed HRT facility. It fits completely within the fence line of the wastewater treatment plant itself. And when we get into the system itself, this is a plan view that shows the various components. So as flow enters the HRT, there's an option for some additional chemical dosing if we need it in the future. And then the primary guts of this thing are pile cloth filters. So basically, it's like a series of discs that are 10 foot in diameter that are wrapped in, like, I'll call it pile cloth. It's like carpet, but it's very fancy carpet, right? Where it actually removes suspended solids from the flow, and the part that enters the center of the filters then comes out as cleaner water. It goes through 3 filters, the flow does, and then it passes over to the purple boxes on the right for UV disinfection. We selected this equipment. The plant already has a UV system for disinfection there, so therefore they're used to the technology, the maintenance required, et cetera. And from there, it has to be lifted with an effluent pumping station and out to an existing conduit on site. So here's some below grade facilities. This is a 3D model of those same facilities. Again, you can see a lot going on as far as the sizing, the various compartments and pump rooms and staircases and so forth associated with this design. We took advantage in some cases where you have a footprint that's occupying the space for this facility. So if instead of carving out little angles or making the oblong shape for the excavation, because we have to excavate through rock for this area, we took advantage of some of those spaces to escalate the full rectangle to maybe add a drain conduit or add a corridor for electrical conduit routing or other piping, so that way staff has easy access to it as opposed to being buried underground. Here's an example of the pile cloth filters in the upper right. Systems at grade, so mainly flush with grade. There's 3 superstructures, 3 above grade buildings. First, the mechanical room on the left. There's the electrical room with a stairwell in the center, and then the UV building itself on the right. Each of the 3 disc filters are going to be covered You can see on the next slide here with an angled cover that gives staff access for visual confirmation that the system's functioning properly, but also the pile cloth is subject to damage through ultraviolet rays, so we have to keep it covered from the sunlight. The next piece is the PEB connection. PEB stands for primary effluent bypass. So where those two blue structures are on the left, in the event the conduit's no longer in service, but if the primary settling tanks had to overflow as an emergency condition out to the bay, they would use the PEB pipe. So we took advantage of this pipe being in place, even though it's still abandoned, to use as our discharge conduit from HRT. So as we pump up flow, one of those red lines discharges into a new structure at that location to send the flow out to the bay. And then what happens at the end of the PEB, it meets up with the existing effluent for the plant, so we have a blended effluent for EPA for treatment, or for effluent limits before you head to the bay. Aaron?
Yes, so the next section of the project is we wanted to make sure that we did not impact the park in a negative manner. Our main focus with the park was to acquire the property so that we could enhance the park, make the park better as part of this project, not to take anything away from it. So we've worked with the Youth Baseball League, we've worked with the Parks and Rec Department, planning to make sure that we are looking at this properly. We don't have a final schematic of exactly what we're going to be doing. We have some ideas. For example, those two ball fields that you see on the far right-hand side at Sprout Park, there's one is actually a dirt field, and then there's one right next to it that's a grass field. We need that area for staging, so we're actually going to relocate those two fields to the old AmVets property. I put this one on here because I wanted to show at this location, this was the property that was purchased previously, I believe it was last year, and this was the building that is the screening building that's going to be expanding 24 feet. At the time that we purchased it, we had no idea what the footprint was of our high rate treatment system. We didn't know which technology we were going to use or anything else, but we wanted to make sure that we got out ahead of it so that we could make sure that we had the space to expand the park into that area, or move the ball fields into that area if we needed to. Our hope was to not necessarily have Sprout Park that has a beautiful vista of the wastewater treatment plant. Rather, we could move those two ball fields closer to the bike path, closer to Sandusky Bay Pathway, and have that more linear path with the beautiful views going directly north. And you'd still have the two ball fields. I believe it's the next, I might have it on a future slide, but the two ball fields on the western side of Sprout Park are planning to stay. So those two fields that I had previously talked about would be this field here, and then there's a little grass T-ball field here. We need this area for our laydown area and for our yard for this project. So we're going to have a driveway coming through here and a driveway coming through here to gain access to the site so that we're not disturbing these ball fields over here. That means that we have to remove this playground and we have to remove this. We've been working these two fields. We're working with the Parks and Rec Department to see if they can procure more equipment for a new playground. As part of our contract, we'll install that playground, but we're not going to buy new equipment with the sewer fund, obviously. But we do need to relocate these two fields. In addition to that, we're talking about a new concession and restroom combined building. That concession building is not in good shape. There's a lot of old sheds and things like that that are out there we've begun to take those down. We're looking to do parking improvements and even create some access to the Sandusky Bay Pathway. You can see here what we'd like to do. There's a lot of children that will get off the bike path from the east and come right through this field to get to where they're playing ball that night. We'd like to create this walkway through here and even another one so the children from the west can get over to their fields as well. This area out in front of Peerless, we're looking to possibly put the playground, the restroom, and concessions. That makes it a lot safer for children that if a parent has a game over on this field, the kids aren't running back and forth through the roads. we're trying to make this a lot safer and put these playgrounds and restroom areas in a location that the kids don't have to interact with the vehicles. Now, again, this is just a rendering for now. This is just a concept for now. We're working with Parks and Rec. We're working with the Little League over there to make sure that we're accommodating their needs. Our goal is to have these 2 fields in by the spring. That way we can take this area out of service and it won't impact them one bit. Turn it back over to Vito.
So some specifics relative to schedule. We issued final design documents to the city, signed and sealed this past Friday, October 21st. We're looking to advertise for bid upon approval by the first week of November, with the bid opening scheduled for the first or second week of December. We're in the process of applying for the funding through the state for the loan for this project, anticipated approval by January, and then an anticipated contract notice to proceed by February 1st would be ideal. I say ideal because this job is EPA mandated and needs to be completed with construction by December of 2024. So substantial completion, we're estimating by October of 2024, where beneficial use is handed over to the owner for use. And then we meet the permit requirement by December 1st, 2024. And then there's some extension of work, maybe some seeding and so forth that are beyond the actual technical function of the project to help restore the site and so forth, probably through the spring of 2025. And the engineer's estimate for the project is approximately $33.5 million. So with that, we can open for any questions.
Comments or questions,
Mr.
Commissioner?
Chairman,
Commissioner Bunting?
I know where the EPA's always chasing, it's like me trying to chase my dog down the street, okay? So what's the forecast for the next 3, 4, 5 years? We get this completed by 2025. Is there something coming? Are you aware of anything that might be changing, maybe as far as UV, the tubes that we're using now? Is there something coming down the road that's going to be very costly?
So as far as, well, once we finish this 5th project of phase 1, that opens the door for potential renegotiation with the EPA to see what other solutions could we look forward to satisfy future requirements.
Because they have a tendency to change all the time. It seems like they're always...
They're kind of like a presidential administration. As staff changes, sometimes the goals of the agency change as well.
And just to follow up on that, our NPDES permit did have a set of projects and then go back and renegotiate, and then a second set of projects that the EPA would recommend. My hope is that that second set of projects can be dramatically reduced, if not eliminated. And those are the discussions that we're going to have in 25 and 26. We're going to put some flow meters in. We showed we're already capturing 92 to 95% of all of the overflow volume from our original general plan in 97. So the hope is that they'll look at that and say, well, you know what, you don't need to install another 120 million, which is what they're already requesting in that previous application or that previous discussion. And hopefully we can reduce that by tenfold or even more and maybe just come up with some newer projects.
My last part is there anything coming down the road as far as disinfection? You know, we're doing the tubes. I know they're very costly, and they've been around for a while. Is there anything coming up in the next 3, 4 years?
From an advancement in technology?
Yeah. Is it like...
UV is pretty effective from the standpoint, it may be a little bit more energy intensive, but the system you currently have at the plant is an older type of version, if you will. And the efficiency of those bulbs and stuff has come down dramatically, so there's cost savings there. But at the same time, you're not dosing your system with a bunch of chemicals that require neutralization, if you will. So once you put disinfectant, you sometimes, neutralize that before you harm the environment. So the lack of use of chemicals in the area is also beneficial.
Thank you.
Mr. Klein, I think I understand correctly that this is really the 5th and final project in the orders that we received from the EPA going back quite a few years ago now. Is that not correct? So this really closes the circle on their first set of orders.
Yes.
Okay. Complicated and very expensive, but this hopefully will satisfy the EPA for a period of time anyway. Additional comments or questions, Commissioner?
Sure.
Commissioner?
Mr. Klein, first of all, I want to say how grateful I am that you have been stewarding this process for a very long time. You've negotiated with the EPA, you're still here, you're getting these projects completed. You've been able to demonstrate a lot of good faith to the EPA. They have been very trusting of you. You've instituted some less gray projects and more green projects, which have been cheaper and better for the environment. It's all been very smart, and I just want to express my appreciation for that. I understand part of what's been presented, but I'm glad you found a great partner in terms of working out the specifics so that we do this the right way. And Mr. Brady was alluding to this, and Mr. Waddington was as well. I mean, you kind of negotiate with the EPA, but at the end of the day, they're the ones that say what you're going to do. And we can get kind of frustrated as ratepayers by that fact. But we also know, and I've said it before, that our local economy and the draw to live in Sandusky is based very much upon having a healthy environment. And we've seen what's been happening in the bay and in the lake, and we know that we need to do our part. Now, there are a lot of other people that need to do their part too, but we need to do our part. When you put together the rate study back in, I think it was 2014, and I think the legislation was adopted in 2015. I don't remember if I can recall that exactly right, but we did have a series of significant rate increases at that point in time. But you had baked all of these projects, as I recall, into those rate increases. And there's a question about, why we're not paying for some of this, more of this now, as opposed to debt funding this. Well, there are a couple simple answers to that. Some of the debt is incredibly cheap, and we'd be fools not to take advantage of that. And then the other thing is that this is going to be utilized by generations to come. So it would be inappropriate, in my estimation, to ask for current ratepayers to pay cash on the barrel. There's no reason to do that. The system will continue to generate rates for decades to come. Those will be paid by the appropriate ratepayers, the people using it at the time. So, but at some point, we probably should have an updated rate study so that we don't do to a future commission what past commissions did to us, which is to say, surprise, we knew we were running out of money for a long period of time. We didn't do anything about it, and that's why we had to have 75% rate increase over 3 years. That was wrong. That was inappropriate stewardship. I'm not sure that the commissioners at the time or the commission at the time were aware of what was happening, but just your thoughts in terms of when we might reevaluate that so that we know we're still on course. Because I know there have been a lot of cost increases.
Yes, absolutely. I've done a cruder version of a rate review on the water and sewer side on an annual basis. It's not a very, it's a pretty timely thing to do, and it's something that it takes a lot of hours. But I've done it, and all of our numbers have shown that we're going to be in the black during those times and even projecting out several years. Now, that being said, I do think it's important that sometime next year we come back and I reevaluate on a more detailed level, a more detailed basis on not just the sewer side, but also the water side, in hopes that we can get a better understanding of where we're going to be, not just 5 years out, but 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Because I've typically based my evaluation on the 5-year capital plan, as well as projecting out just a set number annually, which is what you typically have to do. So I would like to come back at some point next year and with finance director and city manager and just present exactly where we are and where we're looking to go.
Okay, thank you.
Additional comments or questions, Commissioner?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, yeah, I'd also like to thank Mr. Klein for the work that he's done. This is quite impressive. As you were, gentlemen, was going through the slides, and parts of it I understood. At the end of it, had you said this is our plan for taking a trip to Mars, I was still a bit impressed with the amount that I didn't understand. But it's obvious that you've done an extremely detailed study of this, and that we're going to benefit it long term. And yes, making decisions today that 40 years from now, folks are going to say, yeah, they did a good job. Yeah, that's a highlight for being on this commission, being able to do that. And thank you so much for the hard work.
Additional comments, Commissioner? If not, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Camino, and thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Good presentation. Commissioners, we have 7 items on the consent agenda this evening. If any of you wish to move any consent items to the regular agenda.
Chairman,
Mr. Murray.
I'd like, if I could find the agenda, it's here someplace. I think I'd like to remove the first item, which deals with the liquor permit.
Item A.
Item A, thank you.
Oh, good.
We will move item A to be our first item on the regular agenda. Ms. Myers, will you present the consent agenda less item A?
Yes, Mr. President. Item B, Land Bank Mo-to-Own Purchase and Sale Agreement for 442 Camp Street. Item C, Land Bank Mo-to-Own Purchase and Sale Agreement, 823 North Depot Street. Item D, Land Bank Approval to accept 6 parcels. Item E, Sandusky Bay Pathway and the Landing Mecca Motel easements. Item F, Approval to purchase bulk rock salt for calendar year 2023. Item G, GIS Cost Share Agreement with Erie County 2023 through 2028.
Commissioners, having heard these ordinances and resolutions, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Harris.
I make a motion to accept the consent agenda items B through G and declaring that all ordinances and/or resolutions as drafted and presented to the City Commission under the consent agenda shall take an effect in accordance with section reflected in the ordinances and/or resolutions, whether it be in accordance with section 13 or 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Murray.
I just may make a note that there's been a question that's been asked a couple of meetings about the percentage of real estate taxes that go to the city of Sandusky versus the schools versus the county. And if you look on your tax bill, if you're a property owner, it breaks it down. In the city of Sandusky, it is generally, and I think uniformly, I don't think there are any differences within the city, it's 9% to the city, 14% to the county, and just under 76% to the schools. So, just to answer that question.
Good information. Ms. Myers, will you call a roll on the motion, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
Mr. Wantington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Now on the ordinances and resolutions.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
Mr. Wantington? Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Those ordinances and resolutions are passed. We will now turn to our regular agenda, starting with item A.
Notice to legislative authority for a new D1 liquor license, beer only on premises consumption or in original seal containers for carryout only until 1 a.m. for Sandusky Food Hall Bar LLC, 317 East Washington Street.
Commissioners, having heard that request for a liquor permit hearing, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Murray.
I move that we request that the state hold a hearing.
Second, just for yucks.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Mr. Webster, I wonder if you can share with us some background on this request.
Sure. Through the commission president to the commission, this is the former Crimus grocery store that had been purchased for the construction and redevelopment into a food hall concept. It's obviously been stalled a few times since it was initially announced. And while the city has committed an economic development grant for the project, until the completion of the project, we will not expend any funds on it. Director Holliday, who was ill and unable to be here tonight, and I met with the developer of the project, and he did let us know that they had some positive momentum as to financing. And we're waiting for verification of that financing while we continue to extend the grant for now. But obviously, we can continue to hold that until we determine, what happens with this liquor license, or this liquor license transfer might be able to wait for that process as well. I'm not sure, but I can check with Jonathan when he gets back tomorrow as to where we're at in the process of receiving verification of ability to go forward with the project with the city's financing or the city's grant also in place.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. I only speak for myself, but I sense that perhaps this commission does not want to kill a viable project, but I think our patients certainly have been tested on this site for a long time. It appears that we're getting close to fruition with something like that, but I think it is prudent for us to ask for a hearing on this liquor permit, and we can always Mr. Heil, I believe we can always back our way out of that request if these folks do show up with bona fide plans and a letter of credit from a bank.
That's correct. The motion pending right now is just to lodge an objection and ask for a hearing, which starts the process and allows us to have a say during the authorization of the liquor permit. If at some point we withdraw our objection, then there would be just up to the Department of Liquor Control as to whether or not they get the liquor permit.
Understood. Additional comments or questions, Commissioners?
I think it's been, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I think it's been exactly stated, precisely stated as you stated it. Largely, we're just trying to get their attention. And if we get their attention, then I'm good with this. I don't have any particular objection to the permit itself.
Agreed.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Poole?
when is this hearing likely to take place? Ballpark in terms of how long, time between now and then, typically?
Mr. Howe, would you have the answer to that? I know we have 30 days to object, and if you don't, it goes out of our hands.
That's correct. We have 30 days to file our objection. After that, it will probably take some months to actually schedule the hearing with the Department of Liquor Control. And we can either request that here or in Columbus.
Okay, the reason I ask is I just want to make sure there's time for them to do and provide. What is it that they're going to provide us that makes us think this is a viable project?
Mr. Webster, did they indicate to you a document that they would be willing to provide to us?
Through the commission president, Commissioner Poole, Director Holliday asked them to provide a letter from the bank that had approved a loan for the project, and I believe he's still waiting for that letter. So,
Okay, wait and see.
Additional comments, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Meiser?
to be clear, the vote's going to be on to hold a hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
If just to clarify, if I might, a yes vote would be to have the hearing, a no vote would be to not have the hearing.
The yes vote is to have the hearing. Ms. Myers, will you call the roll on that motion, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Wantington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
That motion is passed, and we will request a hearing. Ms. Myers, you present formally item number 1 now.
It is requested a resolution be passed declaring the necessity for the city to proceed with the proposed CDBG fiscal year 21 demolition project number 5, directing the city manager to advertise for and receive bids in relation thereto, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this resolution, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Watt?
I move for the adoption of this resolution under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Ms. Myers, will you call a roll on that resolution, on that motion, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Wantington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
And now on the resolution.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
That resolution is passed. You caught Mr. Pajali in the middle of a drink. That happens. Ms. Myers, you present item number 2, please.
Yes, Mr. President. It's requested a resolution be passed declaring the necessity for the city to proceed with the proposed Mill Street High-Rate Treatment Project, approving the specifications and engineer's estimate of costs thereof, and directing the city manager to advertise for and receive bids in relation thereto, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this resolution, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Meiser?
I move for the adoption of this resolution and declare it takes immediate effect under Section 14 City Charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Does this commission understand that you're on the verge of spending $33.5 million?
I mean, yeah, I know.
And we are part-time legislators. Wow.
It's a lot of money.
Ms. Myers, you call the roll on that motion, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Mr. Harris?
And now on the resolution.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes,
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
that resolution is passed. Ms. Myers, you present item number 3, please.
Yes, Mr. President. It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing and directing the city manager to approve the first and final change order for work performed by Toledo Casson Corporation of Ottawa Lake, Michigan for the Pelee Islanders Stop Piles Project in the amount of $19,727.25 and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Mr. Klein, would you, I think we all know what we're buying here for almost 20 grand, but will you tell us who's paying for that?
Yes, Mr. President. There were two components to this change order. The original project had $6,000 to remove six stop piles. Turned out that there were 5, but they were drilled deep and they were steel, and we couldn't remove them and just pull them out with potentially undermining or compromising the lake bed at that location. Unfortunately, we didn't have drawings, the original construction drawings, so we had to hire a diver. So instead of paying $6,000, we have to pay $14,500 for the city's portion of this. The remaining $168,000 plus will be paid for by our partners up in Canada, and I believe they've actually already sent the payment for their portion of it.
Excellent. Good news, Mr. Klein. Thank you. Additional comments or questions, Commissioners? Ms. Myers, will you call the roll on that motion, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Mr. Harris?
Yes.
That ordinance is passed. Ms. Myers, you present item number 4, please.
It is requested a resolution be passed declaring the necessity for the city to proceed with the proposed East Monroe Street resurfacing project, approving the specifications and engineer's estimate of costs thereof, and directing the city manager to advertise for and receive bids in relation thereto, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this resolution, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Harris.
move for the adoption of this resolution under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Then a motion and a second. Discussion. Myers, you call the roll on that motion, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
And now on the resolution.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
That resolution is passed. Ms. Myers, you present item number 5.
It is requested a resolution be passed declaring the necessity for the city to proceed with the proposed Healthy Haze Safety Improvements Project, approving the specifications and engineer's estimate of costs thereof, and directing the city manager to advertise for and receive bids in relation thereto, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this resolution, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Meiser.
I move for the adoption of this resolution, declare it takes immediate effect under Section 14 city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion. Ms. Myers, you call the roll on the motion, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
And now on the resolution.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
That resolution is passed. Ms. Myers, you present item number 6, please.
It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing and directing the city manager to approve the first and final change order for work performed by Spear Brothers Incorporated of Sandusky, Ohio for the West Side Utility and Connectivity Improvements, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Murray.
move for the adoption of this ordinance pursuant to Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Michelle?
it's nice to see a decrease in a change order. That's refreshing, especially in that amount.
Agreed. Additional comments or questions, Commissioner? Ms. Byers, you call the roll on that motion, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Mr. Harris?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes,
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
that ordinance is passed. Ms. Myers, you present item number 7, please.
It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a contract with Spear Brothers Incorporated of Sandusky, Ohio for the Perkins Ave Water Line and Resurfacing Project and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Meiser?
I move that we pass this ordinance and declare it takes immediate effect in Section 14 City Charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion. Mr. Klein, this is second time around, seems to be a charm.
Yes, Mr. President, fortunately, we got interest on this round of bidding. It's nice when you have the ability to extend the project. Unfortunately, that just means a few more months of inconvenience to the residents and to the users of Perkins Avenue. But we do have a contractor finally, and we're looking forward to get rid of this legacy issue. And I know our water crews are really looking forward to not having to be out there in the middle of winter again, after this winter, of course.
Notice that the bids that we received were tightly grouped. Also, there was no one left out in left field or lowballing it. They were all tightly grouped, so I'm pleased at that. Mr. Klein, do you think the time frame for getting this accomplished is realistic and that we're going to be going right through winter?
Well, this project's deadline, I believe the completion date was extended through December of 2023. The hope is that they can get in there very quickly. The problem is that we've been having long delays on and lead times on utility infrastructure. Some of the castings, some of the pipes, depending on the material, some of the valves, those types of things are long lead times right now. So a lot of these contractors actually have a backlog, and that's why we didn't get bids the first time around. So we're hoping that they can get out there quickly, get the underground out of the way as fast as possible.
East to west?
I hope. That would
That's the
make
direction
the
we're
most sense. We haven't gotten into the scheduling yet, but
Okay.
hopefully by November, we'll know exactly what their plan is, and we'll make sure that the public knows as well, and all the property owners along there too.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Additional comments or questions, Commissioner?
Chairman, just a
Commissioner
question.
Poole?
This water line, is it in the street off the edge, right away?
The existing water line is in the street, and we are putting, it's kind of in the curbside like area, so we're
Okay.
putting it in that same location. We're going to have to run a temporary water line on the surface so we can put it in the same trench rather than keeping that one in place and trying to dig through all the rock and increase the costs. There'll be a temporary water line in the curb with ramps that go over at the intersections and at the driveways. That one will stay in place throughout construction until we can get the new one back in place. I believe, if I recall, we have it done in sections, maybe 2-3 blocks at a time. And it's a similar progression that we're looking at doing on Warren Street as well. Obviously, that one impacts less folks, but that temporary water line will be something that is somewhat of an inconvenience too.
With luck, we'll have minimal disruptions for the folks that use that water line?
The good thing about doing the water line the way that we are doing it is that the existing water line that has had 75-plus breaks on it, that section of it should be out of service when that new one's put in. So instead of waiting till the end of the project to take that one out of service, it'll be out of service much earlier. So it'll actually improve their abilities to make sure that they continue to have water. There will be also temporary services going to each of the buildings that through the winter we'll be making sure that they're not freezing and that they're still running and insulated the way they need to be.
Additional comments or questions, Commissioners? Ms. Myers, you call roll on that motion, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Mr. Harris?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Mr. Harris?
Yes.
That ordinance is passed. Ms. Myers, you present item number 8, please.
It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing a cooperative agreement between the City of Sandusky and the Ohio Water Development Authority to finance the cost of the construction for the Perkins Ave water line and resurfacing project, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Ms. Myers, you call roll on that motion, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Mr. Harris?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
That ordinance is passed. Ms. Myers, you present our last item, item number 9.
It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing and directing the city manager to purchase a 2024 Freightliner M2112 truck from Cleveland Freightliner Incorporated of Parma, Ohio, through the State of Ohio Department of Transportation Cooperative Purchasing Program for the wastewater treatment plant, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Harris.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Mr. Klein, I see we buy this truck today and we get it a couple of years from now. Is that pretty true with most everything we're buying in vehicles right now, isn't it?
Unfortunately, that is a true scenario. It seems like everything we purchase, whether it's for anybody, any other department in the city, it seems like it's taking a while these days. So yes, unfortunately, we won't get it for a year, hopefully the middle of next year, but we know that we keep getting delays as well, so.
That 174,000 mile vehicle will hold out for another couple of years, hopefully.
It has no choice.
It has no choice. Good point. Ms. Myers, will you call a roll on the motion, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes,
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Mr. Harris?
Yes.
that ordinance is passed. That concludes our regular agenda. We'll turn to our city manager for his city manager report.
Thank you, Commission President Brady, Commissioners, audience, and staff. I'll start with donations. Thank you to Sandusky resident Tom Patterson and Barnes Nursery of Huron for the coordination and donation of the tree that will illuminate Shade Mylander Plaza throughout the holiday season. The tree will arrive downtown during the first week in November. Also, a thank you to Karen Bennett. Do I need a motion for that one? I don't know if I need a motion. I guess I'll do a motion to accept just to be safe.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second discussion. Without objection, motion to be approved. Hearing no objection, we're approving that motion.
Great. Second, a thank you to Karen Bennett, who donated $400 to the Memorial Tree Fund at Oakland Cemetery. A silver maple will be planted this fall to honor members of the Good and Brownell families. I'd ask for a motion to accept that donation.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, the motion be approved. Hearing no objection, that motion is approved. Our thanks.
Thank you. I'd also like to request a motion to affirm the reappointment of Dr. Richard Keller to the Erie County Board of Health. Dr. Keller's reappointment would begin January 1st, 2023 for a 5-year term.
So moved.
Been a motion, and I think there was a second.
Second.
And I think on that, we should take a roll call. Ms. Myers, do you call a roll on Dr. Keller's appointment?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Mr. Harris?
Yes.
That motion is approved with our thanks to Dr. Keller for serving on that board.
Great. There's been a recent vacancy on the Housing Appeals Board. If interested in serving on this board, complete an application and submit to the City Commission Clerk, Kathy Myers, at commissionclerk@cityofsandusky.com. A fillable form can be found on the city website at www.cityofsandusky.com under Boards and Commissions. Any questions can be directed to Clerk Myers at 627-5850. While construction activity is taking place at the Justice Center that will interrupt daily activity of the court for 2 weeks, there will be a temporary relocation of the Sandusky Municipal Court to the Commission Chambers at City Hall, 240 Columbus Avenue, from October 31st of 2022 through November 11th of 2022. More information will be posted on the City and Courts websites. Moving on to the Police Department, a reminder that SPD is collecting new coats, hats, and gloves in sizes infant to adult, double extra large. Our community impact officers will deliver these to members of the Southside Enrichment Empowerment Group in December so they can be given to children in need. For Public Works, the drop-off area for bagged leaves is now open and located near the Marquette Drive entrance to the City Service Center. For questions about the city's curbside leaf collection program, visit our website or call 419-627-5884. And finally, a video summary of the South Side Plan progress has been posted on our city YouTube page. We invite commissioners to view the video and share the link with the community. The link and more information on the planning process can be found at cityofsandusky.com/Southside Plan. Thanks. Happy to take any questions or comments.
Questions or comments for our city manager, commissioners? You're letting them off the hook easily. Thank you, Mr. Webster. Move to items of old business. Any items of old business? No items of old business. We'll move to items of new business. Any items of new business?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Murray.
Request that we set an executive session regarding human resources, city manager's office.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Ms. Myers, will you call a roll on that motion, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
That executive session is set. Additional items of new business, Commissioner. If not, we'll go to public comments on any item that pertains to city business. Please step to the podium, share with us your name, address, and your thoughts.
Chris Weedle, 403 East Adams. Thank you for the opportunity to address the commission. Two of the tenets of my Christian faith, as well as our national constitution, are justice and equality. I'm here today because after watching the October 10th commission meeting, I was compelled to speak out against offenses to these Christian and American principles of justice and equality. The half-truths presented by your law director and his lying to all who would hear or read his words do not serve justice. Though his occupation requires truthfulness, his statements have jeopardized his professional standing.
Sir, I'm going to consider
And
that.
absolute disrespect from this Commission, Brady.
I'm going to ask you to cease. I'm going to consider that a personal attack, and I am not going to allow you to continue speaking. You can leave the podium. You no longer have the floor.
Well, it's very interesting.
Chief Oliver, escort that gentleman out of the building. Any additional public comments?
All the way out, sir?
All the way out.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Poole.
we don't allow people to make personal comments.
We don't, Commissioner Poole, we do not allow people to make personal
I
attacks.
said-
When you call our law director a liar, that's a personal attack.
I recognize that. It doesn't mean that he had nothing else to say.
He has nothing else to say once he starts a personal attack.
Actually, that's
Is there
not,
anyone else that has a public comment regarding any items regarding city business?
Thank you, Mr. President. Tim Schwanger, 362 Sheffield Way again. I'm still not quite clear on item number 3, which is the stockpiles for the Pelee Islander. I just looked up the ordinance from last year, and it stated that it was an estimated cost of $175,000, and that we would initially pay for it, and then Owen Sound would reimburse us 100%. So to help me with my mind, are we paying anything out of our pocket to do this project?
I believe that Mr. Klein answered that question. If you would like Mr. Klein to answer it again.
Yes, I don't know exactly what Mr. Schwanger's looking at, but I'm guessing that was probably the ordinance requesting permission to bid. The actual ordinance awarding the project would have been for a total of $157,000 with $6,000 163 total, with 157 to Owen Sound and 6,000 to the city of Sandusky. And that portion that was to the city of Sandusky was to remove those stop piles because the operation of the ferry service did not need those stop piles removed. That was an aesthetic opinion by the city and a safety opinion by the city to make sure that those were no longer there, since they're never going to be used again.
Okay. Now, when we talk about stop piles, we're not talking about the ones that were put in for many years ago for the Island Rocket?
Might have been.
Is that something different? I'm sorry to have, I just need clarity.
Yeah, I don't have a clue what the original intent
Okay, well,
was.
there was pilings to the west of where we put the ramp in for the Jaman. There were like 5 pilings there that weren't being used. I don't know if that's what we're talking about here for stop piles that had to be removed, or?
Mr. Klein, do you have an answer?
Yeah, through the commission president, those were the 5 stop piles. I have no idea why they were originally installed. I do know that I did not find any drawings on them being installed, but I know they were there and they were falling over, so.
Right, which had nothing to do with the Jaman or the Islander. That had to do with the Island Rocket that came. You guys might remember this. It's a big yellow banana boat that came in that I think the county prosecutor had something to do with that. It had nothing to do with the Canadian ferry. The other question would be on the Columbus Avenue streetscape, the presentation, which I've asked for a copy of. She mentioned stakeholders and a survey online. Are there going to be any community meetings here or at the State Theater or some other location where you could maybe take additional comments on that from the public? Because, I mean, this is a Sandusky city plan, not just a downtown, business owner, downtown, residents. It is an overall city plan. So I didn't know if that was part of the process moving forward, or the presentation we saw tonight is just going to be tweaked a little bit more based on comments from stakeholders or downtown, people that live downtown. So do we know anything about that, or you can get back with me, or?
I think Aaron Blair, who's no longer at the meeting, I think we can ask her to respond.
Okay, I didn't know if you guys knew that answer to that or not, or if you had heard anything, about that, so.
We'll get that answer.
Okay, I appreciate it, thank you.
Additional comments from the public regarding any items pertaining to city business? If not, we will move to executive session.
Hang on, Mr. Chairman, before you go to executive session, I need to comment about our interaction with the citizens of the community. I fully recognize we have rules that say you may not make personal attacks on folks, and I support that, and the comments made tonight were inappropriate. Escorted out of the building by a policeman on TV is just over the top. Kabuki theater for show. The gentleman needed to be asked to sit down or change his presentation so that he left out the personal attacks. And in no way do I think we as a commission should be treating citizens in that way. If you folks want to step up for that and stand behind that, you can, but that was inappropriate, having him led out of here on TV.
Entitled to your opinion.
And yes, and I've expressed it. Thank you so much.
Additional comments? Did I hear additional comments from the public?
I'll pass. Thanks.
We'll adjourn into executive session.
Upstairs.
Upstairs.
Yeah.
Okay, the record will reflect that we return from executive session at 7:20, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're adjourned. Good night, Mike, my friends.